Hi, everyone. This is Sonja Robinson hosting the Sun Talk Radio Show, Sustainable Urban Network, Saturdays at 3 p.m. on GODRadio1.com for us to scale up our neighborhoods.
Tune in to Sun Sustainable Urban Network Talk Radio Show on GODRadio1.com. Get up, get out, and get green. We can't let Earth pass us by. We got to scale up our neighborhood, y'all.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another day in Sun. Happy Sun Saturday. You could be anywhere, and we appreciate you joining us today for our grand finale for 2020 on Sustainable Urban Network. And there's no other better way I can think of ending this year with our programming with our next generation of leaders, not even next generation. They're doing the work today. This week, today is our youth series. We have our young activists doing the work for climate change, doing the work for social and racial justice. And we are so excited to hear from all of them. And as we always do on our shows, before we get started, we're going to have our reflection. We're also going to have our Sun Enlightenments, which is encouraged by our modern thought teacher, Don Miguel Ruiz. We're also going to give our Sunshine Shout Out Awards, as well as listing whoever may get the Fossil Shade. In addition to that, give a couple what's happenings, as well as any announcements. So as we get started on all of our shows, we're going to give our reflection, what sets the cadence and the rhythm of what the topic is going to be. And so for today's topic, which is our very young activists on the front lines doing the work, our reflection reads as such. It's abundantly clear that climate change is already having an impact on human rights, and that this impact will only intensify in coming years. And that is by Kumi Naidoo, Secretary General of the Amnesty International, which we have several Amnesty International youth activists on our panel today. Can you tell how excited I am? Can't wait to dive into this conversation with them. I mean, they are fabulous in all of their own rights and ways. So, as we always do, we're going to go ahead and run through our Sun Enlightenments. And our Sun Enlightenment states as such: 1, be responsible with your resources. 2, take the state of our climate and our environmental justice and social justice seriously. 3, don't wait for others, do your part. And this panel is doing just that. And 4, when you do, give it your best effort and from your loving heart. Now, what's going on, you guys? What is the latest? What are folks doing? What is happening? So, as we know, there is a serious political shift, nationally, even locally. And I definitely want to mention that right now, from a political shift perspective, there are folks right now in Georgia that are depending and looking to Black women to really help lead the effort for the Georgia Senate runoff races, with Stacey Abrams as well as others leading the pack. So we want to make sure that we respect our women, both our young women, as well as all of those that are willing to step up and move the chain forward for our justice. What else is happening, you guys, is, well, I can't stop giving it up to our very first Vice President, Kamala Harris, right? So that Black girl magic, I have to acknowledge that. Oh, and a fun fact, out there in Colorado, so there are folks that was waiting for over 14 hours for their very first In-N-Out burger that opened. They waited for over 14 hours. So it just opened up there in Colorado. So that's one of those real hilarious fun facts, but it's true. So I'm going to have them compare that In-N-Out burger to Good Times and let me know what they really think. So that's another sidebar conversation. All right, so food, grab and go. Every Tuesday it's happening at Jacobs Center. And so we want to make sure that everyone is in need, or know those that are in need, know that the resources they can go to. And that's the Jacobs Center, 404 Euclid Street. And there's some food, grab and go. And our communities have really been stepping up and coming together to meet the needs of everyone around. Also, our Dr. Follow and Wendy Schultz, they're going to be reopening their community's health and resource fair, and it's coming soon. So it potentially could happen next month, but just keep a lookout on for that. Our Environmental Climate Justice Committee with the NAACP, we will be meeting this Tuesday, December 1st, as we're also making sure that we wrap up this great term that we've had and highlight the things we're currently doing, things that we're doing going forward. And yeah, you guys come on out. You would love to be part of a group of people that are really about the business and moving things forward and making those public policy differences. Also, the NAACP National Environmental and Climate Justice Celebration is December 3rd. So our local meeting is Tuesday, December 1st, and the National NAACP Environmental and Climate Justice Celebration is that Thursday, December 3rd. And so we are also going to be looking at that transit equity. So this is on a national level, as well as we're going to also hope to have a campaign here locally. And again, also, there are opportunities for work. So if you want to apply for the community health worker position with SDSU, Dr. Follow made sure that we found out about that information a couple of years ago. So we just want to continue to remind you of that. And also the last announcement I'm going to make here is Sunrise on December 6th, Sunrise Movement, which we have representatives here today on our panel, are having their December 9th climate strike. And what this is a report card that they're rating every elected official on topics of social, racial, environmental, and economic justice. And so that is happening December 6th. So make sure you keep out on the lookout as far as what that report card looks like and how they rating our local elected officials here, so we know who to put pressure on and as well as who to continue to support. Now, our Sunshine Award, I can't wait to the end of the show, you guys. I already know that they're superstars in all their own right. So our local Sunshine Award goes to this panel, our youth activist panel. They definitely get that Sunshine Award. Also, locally here is our city council member, Monica Montgomery. The way that she's moving forward with the heart of the justice for people. You see these young people are shaking their head. They have her support too. So we definitely want to give it up for city council member Monica Montgomery for all the work she's doing and really pushing forward for her to be our next city council president. In addition, again, the National Sunshine Award got to go to Kamala Harris as she brings hope to women and young girls of color everywhere around the globe. Now, on to the fossil shade. Well, I don't know if you guys heard this because it's not locally here in San Diego, but in Dallas, Texas, there was a pile of toxic waste dumped in a neighborhood of people of color. And it's just unfortunately, so the person who's creating this dump in South Dallas of just a pile of toxic that's affecting people's breathing, affecting the pollution and increasing the asthma rates, they definitely get the fossil shade. And excited as I am, we're going to hear our topic theme song, and then we're going to jump into this discussion to hear the work that these young activists are doing here locally in San Diego. That is a good day to fight the system. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, when I was a junior in high school, what was I doing? I wasn't thinking about fighting the system. So that in itself is just, I mean, beyond impressive, right? So who do we have here on our panel today? So we have Okalani Dawkins. She is already, you guys, a junior in high school. She's already a TED speaker. She's a TED speaker. She's the vice president of Amnesty International High School Chapter. She's an ambitious high school junior dedicating her life to racial justice, representation, and human rights advocacy. Welcome, Lonnie. We also have Miss Alice Lee. She is also a high school junior dedicated to activism work, leading on climate change, and she has a climate change campaign that she's going to be sharing those thoughts and her work with us today. Welcome, Miss Alice. In addition, we have Miss Malea Van Brocklin. She's also a high school junior, and she is also a coordinator of the different campaigns for Amnesty International at her local high school. Welcome, Miss Malea. In addition to the Amnesty International group, we also have Sunrise Movement by Miss Melissa Elder. She's an environment engineer, very impressive. So you know her passions with environment and climate justice and the work that's necessary. Welcome, Miss Melissa. And we also have Mr. Alex Hahn. He's an electrical engineer graduate from UC San Diego and also working his passion. He found his passion after being laid off and working in the efforts that really make a difference with our environment and our social justice. Welcome, Mr. Alex Hahn. Thank you everyone for joining. So what I want to ask and just kind of kicking off this conversation is, what would you say is, what does environmental and climate justice mean to you? And how do you think it impacts us and impacts our lives? Melissa, would you like to start us off on that conversation?
Sure. Thank you for having us. Really excited to be here today. So thinking about the effects of climate change and climate justice and environmental justice on our BIPOC communities, these communities are already facing a lot of injustices when it comes to air emissions. Even here in San Diego, if we're looking at our communities in Barrio Logan or National City, they're already getting a lot of pollution, air emissions from the freeways that are running through. And then with warmer temperatures, with climate change, they're gonna have more smog, more heat waves where maybe they're already struggling to pay electric bills, but they need to put their electricity to kind of fight the heat. And so these are compounding effects that are coming with climate change. And so injustices that are already there are going to be amplified with the climate crisis.
Thank you for sharing. And so Alice and Lonnie, do you have any thoughts to share on that question as well?
Well, Melissa pretty much already covered it. That's sort of what our goal is as, Amnesty representatives. That is sort of the prime goal of Amnesty. When looking for solutions to address the climate crisis, it's pretty much imperative to put BIPOC communities at the forefront when addressing these solutions, because they are the most vulnerable to the negative effects of climate change.
Thank you. Thank you for summing all that up and actually allowing us to hear your thoughts on this. So next I want to go to Alice for this next question. And can you share some initiatives or projects that you're working on, and why are these initiatives or projects important to you?
Sure, and I just want to say thank you for having us, Sonja. I'm really grateful to be on the show. So I founded a chapter of Amnesty International at Mission Vista High School, and one of their campaigns is climate change, because the effects of the crisis violate human rights, right to life, right to health, right to housing, right to water and sanitation. Climate change magnifies and dramatically expands the inequities that exist in our society, and governments, corporations, and states should be held accountable for it, because they hold the power to take measures, enforce laws, maintain guidelines, and prevent that 1.5 degrees Celsius increase by 2030. This is what Amnesty stands for. I pulled this from an Amnesty article because it really encapsulates their involvement in taking action. Here's the quote: Amnesty will work with a variety of different groups in key countries to mount pressure against governments and corporations which are obstructing progress. Amnesty will support young people, but also Indigenous people, trade unions, and affected communities to demand a rapid and just transition to zero carbon economy that leaves no one behind. Litigation and the use of national and regional human rights mechanisms will be additional tools to keep up the pressure. I really want to emphasize the leave no one behind part, because Amnesty International does not support any climate action that strengthens inequity. That is the opposite of what they want. About the projects we're doing, right now we're hosting a Right for Rights event. It will take place December 6th, the same Day as the Sunrise Movement event. This is Amnesty International's largest annual event, and what we do is we write letters urging governments to do the right thing and to end human rights abuses in their country. This could mean freeing a wrongfully imprisoned activist or offering an activist protection from threats they receive because of their human rights work. We basically put pressure on people in power. This year we have 6 priority cases about activists from the United States all the way to Saudi Arabia because it's international. And I really want to highlight one of the cases because it relates to what we're talking about. It's about an environmental activist from Colombia. I just read her story the other day, and I can include a link as well if anyone is interested and wants to hear about it.
Absolutely, yes.
It's extremely inspirational. She works with hundreds of campesinos, people part of her farming community, on a range of projects from reforestation to youth empowerment. And she's defending Colombia's ecosystem from oil drilling, pollution, deforestation, rice plantations, and contaminated water that result from economic interests of businesses. But now she's receiving death threats from illegal groups, the military, multinational companies, drug traffickers, and we're demanding the Colombian president ensure her protection because we all breathe the oxygen generated from the Amazonian ecosystem. And I really want to, just to summarize it, I think this is important because she's fighting for us, so it's time we fight for her and her cause.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. So, I mean, right there, you guys, you see how impressive these youth are. I mean, this youth activism and working on so many different efforts to make a difference in our lives. I'm like, what was I doing as a junior in high school? It definitely wasn't that, but I'm so glad you are, Alice. You are definitely always have a very soft spot in my heart. Malea, you also have some work that you're doing on your leading different campaigns and efforts around social justice, also climate. Can you share that with us as well?
Yeah, of course. Me and Alice are actually working on a campaign that we're calling Environmentalists for Education, because we and our group of student activists really believe that education on climate change and environmental justice should be available and affordable for all young and even older people too.
Like me, I'm allowed to be a part of it.
Yeah, but we really want to make sure that we're raising a generation of activists who are going to make change in their communities, and they're going to stride towards different different technologies and things like that we can improve upon the climate change issue. And so I think that always starts with knowing what climate change is and knowing how humans are affecting the negative change on our earth. So we're working on a list of reforms and practices that we can implement in our school district. And we haven't released them yet, but we're still finalizing them and trying to make sure that we can start with small change within our district and then hopefully spread from there too.
Oh, I love it. I mean, making impacts not just at your local school, but considering the district, right? And then the district actually considering like the city, and then it goes through the county. I mean, that is just amazing. Melissa, would you share some of the work that Sunrise is actually doing?
Yeah, so we have worked on a couple different components of activism. So we've worked on the Climate Action Plan in Escondido to incorporate revisions that are beneficial for the community, keeping in mind underserved areas of the community. We are currently working on pushing for public power to reject investor-owned utilities and reinvest money back into our community and much needed community services. We host fundraiser campaigns for surrounding LGBTQ issues and migrant shelters in Tijuana. And we also worked with the Otay Mesa Detention Center for a fundraiser for them. And then we also do political action. So we did a wide awake action at Ben Hueso's house since he voted against the oil drilling setbacks, cause toxic chemicals, which causes preterm birth and cancer rates, increasing next to those people that live there. And then we're also building community power by working with and collaborating with other organizations in the community that are already, boots on the ground doing great work. And we are going to be focusing now building more political power by engaging more with elected officials and pushing for more progressive policies. And we know that in order to continue to advocate for our climate justice, we know that racial justice is intertwined. So we're standing together with our brothers and sisters also fighting for Black Lives Matter and making sure that we get justice for Breonna Taylor, for George Floyd. Yeah.
Awesome. And you mentioned one of our elected officials I think he's come out of term because actually Nora Vargas won the county board of supervisors in District 2. So I got to give her a shout out. She was on our show too this summer. So, so the work that you guys did potentially may have had an impact on how that race came out. I don't know. I'm speculating, but it sounds good, right? Okay, Alex. Go ahead and share your thoughts on some of the reasons why you're involved in this. I mean, especially with your academic background of being an electrical engineer. Can you kind of share why you decided that working on the front lines of climate change and environmental justice really kind of like hit you in a place that made you wanted to get involved and do something about it?
Yeah, so I'm thinking back to just kind of like my early years. So I think it was around maybe middle school where I was just like eating lunch at recess. And then I overheard some people saying, oh my God, oil's gonna run out in 100 years. And then I was like, oh my God, that's gonna happen. And so that was on my mind for a little bit. Then into high school was when I actually learned, okay, climate change is actually a really big, scary thing. And I really had no idea what to do about it. I felt very powerless, but I thought maybe engineering is the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to work on renewable energy, maybe wind power, maybe solar power. I'm not too sure. I'm still in high school.
Right.
So after that, I finished my degree in engineering and I got to do a good 2 years in like green building design. And when I was doing that, I just kind of realized that I really enjoyed like working with the team, doing social events. I really enjoyed onboarding the interns and training them. And I realized like, I really just want to work more with the community. Doing engineering feels very removed, and I want to be more on the front lines with that and in the activism scene. So that was like kind of my calling. And then after coronavirus happened, I was laid off and I attended one of the George Floyd protests in Escondido by accident, completely accident, because I was supposed to hang out with a friend and there happened to be a protest there. And yeah, it was really cool. So basically when I was there, I realized there's like over 300 people and they're all super young. They're all in high school and they are all chanting with this vigorousness and this livelihood that I've never experienced or seen in my real life. And I was actually so moved I actually teared up a little bit and I realized like, wow, like if youth can organize like this, we can do something absolutely incredible.
I mean, bad, not bad meaning bad, but bad meaning good, right? I mean,
yeah. And so I think that was the point where I was starting to realize like, okay, I think I'm going to go into it. I really want to be part of this force for good because I have not been moved like that doing engineering. I was moved by that, by being on the actual grounds and seeing what people were doing. And that's kind of where I'm at now. So after that, I joined
awesome.
Sunrise.
That's excellent. So there's some demands that I know that you guys are working on or have worked on or your organization. And so putting in perspective that the work that you guys are doing here are locally are making an impact, but I definitely know Amnesty International, I believe Sunrise too, that it's not just the local front that the work you're doing, but it's also felt globally, which is very, very impressive, right? I mean, I was honored to be a guest speaker of you guys a few months ago, right? And it was an international platform. So based on the work that you guys are doing, can you share the demands that you believe that are making a difference for us to really realize justice in our world, you know, in our local communities, as well as throughout the world? Would somebody be able to share what those demands are? Alice, are you familiar with the demands with Amnesty International?
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk about what Malea and I are working on as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. So the climate change campaign that Malea was talking about just like, you know, a few minutes ago, Our goal is to promote the importance of climate awareness within our schools. We're new, but like Malea said, we're currently working on formatting and structuring our asks, proposals, reform, actions, etc. And although our initiative is still being developed and has been developing for the past several months, one thing has remained explicitly clear, and that is our underlying belief, the catalyst that has been fueling everything we've done up to this point. We believe that school districts, teachers, staff, anyone who specializes in education has a responsibility to educate students on relevant topics that pertain to our future well-being, and that is ultimately our demand.
I'm gonna say that is a demand. Yes,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
So this climate crisis, all students deserve to know about it, like regardless of socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, location.
Or
Students
even
across
political, or even their political background or family
exactly.
background. Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what we're thinking. Students all across the United States and even internationally deserve to learn about something like this that is significantly affecting our lives. And yeah, education just needs to be equitable. So
I love that that pairing of education and equity, and and the fact that you guys are really moving forward with pairing those two together. And I am so inspired of listening to all of you guys. And I'm going to say, like I said, I just gush over you, but I also have to realize that your village that's behind you guys allow you to probably think bigger than beyond tomorrow or the next hour. Because most teenagers are just focusing on what outfit am I going to wear tomorrow, right? And for you to have this forward thinking, and that's what S.U.N is all about: forward thinking, action driven action, or action behavior, that's driven to make changes in our neighborhoods and in our communities. And for you to think of what I'm doing is not just going to be for my classroom. It could be for not just my school, throughout the district and the world. So Malea, did you also want to talk about that education and equity, connection that you guys are pairing those two together?
Well, I think part of the issue is that some school districts don't have the funding to
Mm,
provide their students with information on environmental education. Um, so if they don't have access to those resources, then they're not going to be able to learn about it. They're not going to be able to start making change and moving forward towards solutions because they don't have that basic foundation.
mm-hmm.
So we think that all schools need to be able to access resources for free. Um, so we're looking into free resources for education on climate change, and also other small projects, especially in like lower age groups. Elementary and middle schoolers need to be getting involved as well, because it should be a process. You're not going to learn about climate change in a single class throughout a year. It should be something that you build upon over the course of your education. And so we
Mm,
want to make sure that we're implementing projects from the elementary school level to the high school level, and then maybe even into college, and then even after you graduate. So we want to make sure that schools are providing the resources for students to get that ball rolling and start working towards change. And it's not going to happen if they're not able to afford it. So we need to find ways to make that possible.
yes, and I would say that that is, more than just impactful, right? So just to kind of share my experience, when you said not just, in high school, but let's go younger, is that I was way beyond, graduate from college, and started with a global consulting firm. And it was there that I was asked to be part of the green team, by the senior partners and senior leadership. And just being a part of the green team and learning, as we all know, that it is the humanity that's making an impact on our environment and our climate, that has a reverse negative impact in our environment, right? And so learning these attributes and these characteristics, and it allowed me to start thinking different, right? Like, you know, I was even living in a different state, and I started bringing a canvas bag for my groceries, you know, just started, you know, changing and modifying, you know, maybe not through A through Z, but I did, those classes are being involved in that, Malea, as well as Alice, I think is very impactful, because it did allow me to start thinking differently, right? And it is about having to renew your mind and thinking holistically and becoming one with harmony with your environment, and not harming your environment at the same time. So Lonnie, I actually want to also hear about what are some of your suggestions in addressing equity for BIPOC communities, so the Black, Indigenous, people of color, and how do you promote racial justice through climate awareness? If you could share your thoughts and how those are interconnected.
Well, we sort of already, I know Melissa already sort of glossed over it, but if we're looking at, you know, in general, again, when presenting these solutions, when coming up with these solutions, along with holding our governments accountable, corporations accountable, it is so important to amplify Black and Indigenous voices when coming up with these solutions, because again, they're the most affected. These communities, especially Indigenous communities who are already, you know, offered basically scraps of the land that belongs to them by the government, they're also presented with the issue of the government, you know, looking at implementing pipelines on land that, you know, essentially is their cultural identity. It's, you know, what's left of their cultural identity, what they're given. You know, if we look at Black communities or urban communities that are concentrated or have a high concentration of Black residents, they're sort of put in this, you know, perpetual cycle of, you know, poverty and being subjected to health risks that come with direct results of climate change, like poor air quality, heat strokes, etc. You know, and they might not be able to afford proper care, and that's just that cycle of, you know, them being overlooked in a sense. So it's also important to, you know, listen to Black and Indigenous climate activists, because I feel like in mainstream media, just considering the little exposure that climate activists get as is, we barely see BIPOC voices, we barely see POC voices in general. So it's so important to amplify those voices and take those voices into consideration when addressing the climate crisis.
I totally agree. And so, Alex, I would like to ask if you could kind of give us little like a timeline of some of the projects that you are either worked on or been engaged in or aware of that Sunrise Movement are totally engaged with our communities in making these change for climate change.
Yeah, so I would say that nationally, Sunrise has been pushing for, if you've all have heard, the Green New Deal. And that itself is a very broad framework and is also not fully fleshed out. And there are considerations that can be also included to make sure that it is more equitable. And so on the national front, in order to get this Green New Deal passed, we need to be getting basically the control of the presidency, which we do have now, the Senate and the House of Reps. And so the Senate race in Georgia is basically our silver bullet. If we can win those 2 seats, we have a majority to basically pass the Green New Deal and just start mobilizing for climate change, because we have less than maybe 9 years left to really do something about this. And it's so important because during World War II, we have massive, massive government mobilization where the whole entire country was united. We are going to devote our resources and time to make sure that we can get through this. And that is the exact mindset we should be in right now. We should be mobilizing as a complete country, because this is a crazy world disaster. It is a threat magnifier on so many levels, because it will cause massive migration, massive food shortage. And so if anything, this is the thing we need to absolutely be united on.
I totally agree with you. And so here on S.U.N, we've had a few topics specifically on the Green New Deal. And so I definitely agree with you from a national perspective, but I also see the power and our local Green New Deal, right? San Diego's Green New Deal. And that even from, what you guys know so very well and working in the space of organizing for a change is that often it comes from the grass up, right? From the grassroots, and that pressure, our public power policy, right? And that we have the voice as being representations of the public. And so I also see like the bottom up as well as the top down, as an approach to make sure that that framework is at the forefront of decision making, that framework is at the forefront from land use locally, water treatments is at the forefront of, passing certain, legislations locally that really impacts us, as well as more nationally. So definitely appreciate you sharing that. Melissa, would you also like to share some efforts and initiatives that either you are directly engaged in working on, or those that you are very proud that the Sunrise Movement are taking, leadership roles in?
Well, I think as we all know, Biden wasn't our first pick, but we're really glad that we are able to take a step to get Trump out of office. And we know that we cannot rely on one person or a political individual to meet all of our needs and write laws to get us out of this problem that we're in. That's going to take a lot of community empowerment, broad mobilization, and like you said, not only at the top level, but also out at the community level. And so that's part of what we're working on too, is working with community members and other groups that are trying to empower the communities to stand up and fight for what they're needing in the community. And like Lonnie mentioned, having those, BIPOC voices are so important, but if these individuals are working 2 or 3 jobs, they don't have childcare, they're working, struggling to live day to day and get their basic needs met, they don't have the time, energy, or bandwidth to show up and go to city council meetings or, talk to the representatives. And on top of that, it's so inaccessible to get involved in politics. When I first started, it's really overwhelming. And then after that, we have people that, English is maybe their second language, and it's just a really difficult process. And I think it's so important to get work with the community to empower them to fight for those solutions that we need.
Yeah, I totally agree. It definitely can be, overwhelming, like, at some point, and I'm going to say this out of love and respect, especially to my high schoolers here. But at 18, I know you guys are not even 18, but even at 18 years old, you think, oh, you just know how the world works, right? And then, as you grow and get evolve and get involved in other things, you're like, oh my gosh, and I just kind of thought about that, Melissa, when you were saying that, it could be overwhelming from like the political structure and, legislatively, but also there's steps to this, right? And showing up, as my, my show last week with had some of my environmental justice Avengers on, is part of the first step, right? And so you guys are maybe exception to the rule because you're already engaged, right? So my high school Avenger, social justice Avengers on today's show, there's still steps to this in life, but you guys are, clearly surpass the average bell curve by far, right? You're you're the cream of the crop of those that that want to be you, and they're already grown when they grow up, right? So again, I give a lot of props to your parents and the village that you come from, and those that have helped shape your thinking in your mind, not to just think immediately, but to think beyond. I think that's amazing. So as we're kind of like talking on this topic, so I believe, like I said, you all are like these youth Avengers, right? That are really, that a lot of us can have so much hope, and it's even a relief of where, our future lies at. But I also want to hear your thoughts. What do you think that, is critical and essential as we're working towards these efforts for environmental, social, and racial justice? You have a platform of increasing and increasing this awareness for action. And so what I want to ask is this another just general question out there. What would you say is some of your most challenges as you're working towards organizing, even in your high school? Alice, did you want to answer that question?
Oh, sure. I just want to bring up something that happened when I was in sophomore year. Um,
Mhm.
when I first started Amnesty Club, that was like my first term. I was getting everyone together and everything was like really new and I was a little nervous. And I really wanted to do something about climate change because I
Mhm.
knew that like that was one of Amnesty's main campaigns. And what happened was I organized this climate change strike at school. And I remember Lonnie was there. She helped me make some of the signs that we were holding up, and yearbook came and they took pictures. But what happened was that day it was at lunch because we didn't want to skip school. I know like
Good.
activists like Greta Thunberg, yeah, she skipped school, which is like very inspirational. But we go to Mission Vista, it's like 4x4, and the workload is overwhelming. So we were like, let's just take it a little easier and we'll just do it at lunch. And we got a group of maybe 20 people to hold signs and we marched around school. It was climate strike day. So we were saying things like, you know, we have to save our planet and we were chanting.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that was the experience that really opened my eyes to what other students thought about climate change. That
Mhm.
day, I was really expecting like some other students to join with us and to like join our strike and to really show everyone at school that, you know, we care about climate change because they're students. It's going to affect us the most in our futures. But everyone was just standing there and they were watching us and it was really awkward. And it wasn't the best experience. And I
Mhm.
learned a lot from that because I
Right.
learned that um, you have to find a better way to encourage students to do something. There's like other ways to get them involved, to get them motivated, to get them to join your cause, and maybe like starting a strike in school, which our school has never done anything like that before. Maybe it's a little too extreme. So baby steps. We have to take baby steps to get people involved. And I just wanted to, yeah, bring up that event.
Right. No, I remember because that happened in so many different schools, like all around our county, all around the country, right? And so I love and respect that you said, oh yeah, it was a strike, but because our workload, you know, we just did it during lunch. So I totally get and respect that to make sure that you still are committed and responsible for your studies. Melissa, would you like to share like any challenges that you know, as an organizer that you may face and how you're able to overcome them as you continue to have passion for this work?
I think what is one of the most critical components to organizing is connecting on the personal level and making that connection on why is it something that I'm passionate about and how is it impacting people that I care about, people that you care about. Something that was really it really resonated with me, and it was talking about, you know, using the polar bear image for climate change. You know, nobody is friends with a polar bear. Like, it's really sad, but it's really hard to make that connection with someone. But when you talk about, hey, my neighbors literally half a mile from here they have asthma rates, you know, significantly higher than everybody else, and it's just going to get worse because of climate change, or, you know, talking about your personal experiences with when you know, went through a hurricane, like that's something that really can connect people and get them inspired and motivated to join. So that's something that with Sunrise we really focus on, is, you know, sharing that personal story, making those personal connections, and tying it to a personal level, not just overarching, you know, what's going to happen, you know, climate's changing. No, what's going to happen here in our community, and how are our people going to be affected? What's going to happen, you know, in the global South with, you know, famine, droughts? We're going to have more climate refugees coming through, and so trying to make those specific connections. And I think right now with, you know, coronavirus and the pandemic that's happening, it makes it a lot more difficult to try to get people mobilized. And when, you know, we're again worrying about basic needs, we've not had a stimulus check since the beginning, and, you know, there's a lot of things like when we need to take care of the
Maslow's hierarchy. Yeah,
exactly.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your basic.
Yes.
Yes,
We need
right.
like livable wages, Medicare
Mhm.
for all, affordable housing. We need to take care of those basic things so that way people can have the bandwidth to start thinking about other things. What's going to happen 3 years from now, next year, versus what's happening today in my life.
So then I also think, and I agree with you, but there also needs to be that integration, because environmental justice is integrated with that Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? And so unfortunately, like a lot of communities of color, Black communities that have more asthma rates, the knowledge or understanding is just haven't been shared. The understanding that a lot of times the reason why there's more asthma, more babies have asthma, is because the air pollution is so horrible, right? And so just I can't breathe, as far as breathing, toxins in the air, pollutants in the air, or have really poor air quality should also be rated as our, basic, needs from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think part of our work and job is making that integration of these facts to those basics. So because I said it several times, I said it last week and I'll say it again, that we're very coastal and the ocean should be a natural purifier. And so when San Diego ranks like 6th worst pollution, air quality, right? And then El Centro is actually the worst, which is still part of San Diego County. That's alarming. I mean, that's alarming enough to say we can't keep on this rate, and so not knowing that the reason why your child has asthma because you live in this area, you didn't know that the air quality. So just making those connections, as you mentioned earlier, Melissa, as far as understanding how this impacts you as a human, and not just like you said, the ice cap in the North Pole is melting, right? That is, you talked about the polar bears, but indeed, I totally understand that. So I want to also get your thoughts on our vision for the future. I want to hear your vision for the future. I mean, you guys are definitely inspiring to me, and I hopefully it's inspiring to our listeners and our viewers. Just to know that, from those that have graduated from college, but yet are doing this work with such a very impressive academic background in which you're matching with your passion to do what's right socially, as well as in our climate needs, and then having these juniors in high school that are, I mean, like I said, it's like, what am I wearing on Monday, is oftentimes what we're talking about, or what's the latest dance. And yet you guys are organizing not only at your local level, but to make impacts, throughout our county and throughout the country is, it's more than just inspiring. So I definitely want to have an opportunity, and I'll start with you, Lonnie, and just want to hear, your vision for the future. And I also like to ask you, do you see the possibility of us as all humans living in a just world?
That's such a tough question, and I have so much to say about it, but just to sum it up, it starts with conversations like these, I think, because it starts with educating people. That is why I work specifically in education equity when it comes to my activism, more so about representation as opposed to Malea and Alice's goal of implementing education about the climate crisis in our schools, but those two issues go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. That's why it's sort of hard to get through to the general public when it comes to talking about climate change, because we just aren't educated. It's not, made mainstream because it's not, the general masses aren't being educated about climate change. So it starts with education, and in the future, the more and more people we have educated on this issue, the more impact we have, the more we'll be pushing for, reforms in governmental policies regarding maybe funding to low-income communities, BIPOC communities, because funding and climate change in those communities also go hand in hand. But as for living in a just world, it's really hard to determine, because some of these issues that come with racial inequity, climate change, they're rooted in basically the system that our society was founded on. So I don't really have a clear answer for living in a just world, but we definitely can work towards it as much as possible.
Thank you for your answer and being very, transparent with us. Because I was just curious, with your younger living eyes, are you hopeful for that change? And so I appreciate you sharing that. Alice, would you like to share your thoughts on, if you see the possibility of us living in a just world with the work that you're doing as well?
Sure. Really going off of what Lonnie said, because I think Lonnie summarized it. She summarized everything I was thinking. I don't think the entire global population will unite together and collectively stand for justice, but I think that having those like few people who possess the courage to stand up and voice their opinions and speak out against injustice, those people are the key players in guiding us.
Like you.
Thank you. And really, I think I really want to talk about like my hopes for the future. Kind of what Lonnie was saying as well. I really hope that there's more representation in the climate movement. I do think white activists are currently the face of the movement right now, and I'd like to see more BIPOC stand up. I know Greta Thunberg, she's like admirable and she's like very incredible. I love her so much, but BIPOC people also need to be seen at the forefront as well. I wanted to bring up this incident that I learned about through a TED Talk. So this year, 5 powerful female climate activists came together to give a press conference at the World Economic Forum. And if you look at a group picture that was published by the Associated Press, the only woman of color, she was cropped out of that picture. And I think that's the issue. She said, it was Vanessa Nakate, she said, you didn't just erase a photo, you erased a continent. And I think we have to have less of those incidents happening. We can't have women of color, we can't have BIPOC being cropped out of pictures. We have to see them at the front. They have to be the faces of the movement because they are affected by this the most. Taking from that TED Talk again, David Lammy said, and it is people of color who are more likely to suffer in the climate crisis. The cheapest housing tends to be near the busiest roads, and many of the lowest paid jobs are in the most polluting industries. People of color constantly lie at the bottom of the housing, educational, and employment ladders. Black Americans are exposed to 56% more pollution than they cause. White Americans breathe 17% less air pollution than they produce. And that's also my hope for the future. I hope that we can end environmental injustices and really increase representation, remove environmental injustices, and find a way to provide leverage to all activists, regardless of skin color, regardless of gender, sex, race, ethnicity, and your social status. And also one last thing, I know I'm like talking a lot, but I really hope that I really hope that governments can be more supportive, because I attended a COP26 conference recently, and one of the speakers was a representative for an indigenous community in, I believe, South America. And he was saying that their government was very oppressive and they silenced the voices of his community. And we have to raise the voices of BIPOC. We have to encourage them to stand up. We can't have governments and political figures ignoring them and disregarding their opinions, because their opinions matter just as much as everyone else's.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Let's work together. I mean, you get me inspired. So I want to allow this a few more minutes that we have for our show for the Sunrise crew, as well as Amnesty International, to, share your thoughts on anything else you want to discuss, whether that's the youth role, in our fight for justice. I'll tell you what, all the other generations before literally are looking at you guys, and you guys are leading us where, unfortunately, we should have already set up where it's better for you all. And I'm just saying, even taking responsibility for my generation. There's no way that I would have predicted that my son's generation would have to face some of the same, tragedies and unrest and civil unrest and social unrest that reflected back in the 60s, right? And so every generation is responsible in doing their part. although however the tables have turned, that it is our youth, that you guys with a pure heart and pure thoughts are able to lead us in a direction that we really should go. So I want to just kind of open up this platform, allow you to share any thoughts you have on the movement that you're part of, on the movement that you see, as well as the role that you see that the youth have in our justice. Alex, would you like to start us off?
Yeah. So I would say that being a youth, I feel like I have an ability to be molded in many ways. And that also means that I can be very open to new ideas.
Mm.
And I think it's incredible that the young generation, the millennials, the Gen Z, all of us have been woken up by the injustice, and we have also been able to share that so easily. We have social media, we have TikTok, Instagram. It's made sharing information and being accessible like very, very easy, and it's been able to wake us up in that way. So I am super hopeful that this is the generation, and I really hope that this is the generation that brings towards the change, because that's what I'm hoping for. I want to be in a world where we can see each other and where we can say, I see you, you are my fellow human being, I respect you, I want to hear from you, I want to hear your story because you matter to me. That's the world I want to see.
Yes.
And that's what I'm hoping for.
Excellent. You brought us home, bro. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Malea, would you like to share your thoughts on the role that the youth representing that youth of making changes in that just world that we all want to see and working towards?
Yeah, I think that we as the young generation, we are kind of forced into this movement where we have to fight for change because it's our lives that is going to be affected as we grow up. The older generations aren't going to be around. They may, but they're not going to be as likely to be around as us and even the next generation. And we're going to be the ones that are witnessing our world fall apart. And so we have to make change. And we are forced into this because older generations have sort of failed to provide a good foundation for us. But we have to start changing things now, or else it's never going to get done. And I just think that it's easy to fall into a negative mindset as youth, knowing that there's a good chance if we don't start working as a collective to work to change things now, that our futures are going to be tainted by climate change and all the effects that come with it. So we just have to move. We have to move fast. We have to get things done. And I encourage all older generations and all people who are in positions of power to be receptive to the youth who are speaking and to people who are asking for change, because they're not going to be the ones who are around and who it's going to affect, but we are. It's going to be us who are sacrificing our lives because older generations have failed us. So I think I encourage all younger people to become activists and to make active change in the world. And then also older people, your part is to accept that and to help us get to where we need to go.
Oh, absolutely. Please reach out. Let me know however I can help, because I'm already thinking like, I wonder what time they get out of school. Can they come lobby some elected, some bills, some legislative bills with me? Melissa, I definitely want to hear your thoughts on, your role, the role of the young adults in this movement towards, climate justice, environmental justice, and just overall social justice in our world.
Yeah, I think like Malea said, it's kind of the final countdown right now. We have 9 years to completely change how we're doing business, or there's going to be really catastrophic consequences. And we already know that people are suffering right now. And we want to make the change. We know that what people have been doing for the past, 100 years, 200 years isn't working for BIPOC folks. Our government set up on white supremacy. It's doing really well for white people. Capitalism is faring really well for those who are benefiting from it. You know, capitalism was built on stolen land and free labor to build up wealth. And if we're looking at, you know, countries like Sweden, where people have a smaller wealth inequality and people have Medicare for all, I know we can, as the youth, as growing as a majority of the population and BIPOC communities who maybe typically had been non-voters, we're awakening this beast in a sense that I know that we can come together and make these changes, because we can get Medicare for all, make sure people have living decent wages, affordable housing where it's not next to a freeway or a polluting facility where kids are having asthma. Like, I know we can do that, and we need to stand up to our elected leaders. We need to get corporate interest out of politics. So that's some of the things we're fighting for, making sure that we're getting fossil fuel money out, corporate interests out of politics, electing politicians who stand with those values. And again, like leaning into love and solidarity and building those strong relationships with one another is the way that we can move forward for a better future for all of us.
Great, thank you so much. So I want to ask Alice if you had any last thoughts, and then Lonnie, if you wanted to give us the last thoughts of the show.
Sure, I just wanted to add on to what Alex was saying. I'm really hopeful for the future because I've seen a lot of progress from that climate strike I held my sophomore year to right now. I'm seeing so many of my fellow students on Instagram reposting like information about racial justice, about environmental justice, about, you know, climate change and all that stuff. So I'm really happy that a lot of students are really rising up and utilizing their platforms to encourage others and to educate others. And also, I read an article today about how scientists found like this seaweed that you can feed to cows to reduce methane emissions. And I think that really brings me to my last point that I want to add before the show concludes, or before Lonnie concludes the show. I feel like the youth, they have so many options available to them for the future. They can be scientists, they can be politicians, they can be a voter, they can be activists. All of those different occupations can help us combat the climate crisis. And that's why I really think this movement is so important, because anyone can really join in and do something. So yeah.
Great, that's excellent. Thank you so much, Alice. And Lonnie, what are some of your thoughts as we're concluding our topic for today?
Well, everyone summed it up perfectly. Everyone took the words right out of my mouth, but just like an ending note, complacency and staying silent on social issues, especially the climate crisis, it's perpetuating this problem. You are not just one voice, but your voice is a contribution to progressing our society and coming up with these solutions against certain injustices built off of the systems that we see that predominate our society. So just stay active in, you know, speaking out in advocacy, because your contribution counts.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much. No better way could I think of ending our season, you know, for 2020 than with these very inspiring, motivating young adults and youth for our sustainable urban lifestyle as they're working towards scaling up our neighborhoods, improving the quality of our lives. They are definitely the leaders that that I am only hoping to help encourage in any way that I can. And they will definitely be back. And our next year, we're going to start our next programming starting 2021. Thank you, everyone, for all the love and support that you have shown to Sustainable Urban Network. We appreciate you, and we'll see you in 2021. Enjoy your holidays. Thank you.